How you doing, Brad here? We got a tranny to do. We got a 4R100 for you this time. This is out of a 2002 Ford pickup truck. As you see, it's a diesel. Diesels have the big cutout at the bottom here. A big block will look exactly the same, but the cutout will not be there. It'll be straight across. And gas motors, they're completely different on the front end, so that's the way it's out. Another thing that's for 4R100, they have sensors. The E4OD does not. This will kind of cover the E4OD and the 4R100. We'll kind of explain as we go through the differences here and there. There's not a lot. So I'll get this on my bench and we'll start getting to the part. Okay, the first thing we need to do is we need to take this bypass hose off for your cooler lines. Don't ever put a gun on this. These will break. The little fittings here will break, and you don't want to have to go buy new fittings. A lot of people will remove this, find some way to get rid of it. Some people don't like it. You know, it's really up to you what you want to do. I usually leave them on. There's some pros and cons either way you go, because if the cooler gets plugged, what it does is it bypasses it, puts the fluid right back in the tranny, but the fluid's extremely hot. So it's really up to you what you want to do. Alright, with that removed, these little washers off of here. Now, get the tail housing off. Now, as I said, there's two sensors. Sometimes they're kind of tough to get out. Let me grab my air. You want to be very careful. Taking your sensors out. Sometimes they don't want to go out, and you'll break them. Right out. Awesome. Get the tail housing off. Good today, huh? Notice it still has the mount on it. A lot of the times it is extremely hard to get this mount off. It's almost rust in. Let's see if we can get this off easy. See if it'll come off. Let me get a bigger gun. Alright, we've got my 1/2-inch gun. We'll try that. See if we can get that off. Bucket now. If you look, I'll move the camera. If you look right here, this is your park pole. That's what you get park with. Take the little spring off, and your pin, and you can usually just kind of finagle this. Might have to move the shaft a little bit right out. I always leave this on. You don't need to take this one off right now. Now on the side, we'll get the bracket and the park safety neutral switch off. Got to be very, very careful with these because they do like to break. You got to be very careful getting this off. I'm getting lucky. This one's moving. Sometimes these will rust onto here. I always suggest before you put them back on, put some anti-seize on here so they don't get rusty in here, and I try to clean this up. Now I like to take this off. A lot of the times people give it to me with it off. You don't want to roll it over and break this. So let me get a pair of dikes. I got my dikes, and we just carefully go behind it and squeeze it. And what it does is it pulls it off so you don't damage it. It's better than putting a bar behind it and breaking it. So get that off. Now that I've rolled the transmission on its back, we'll get the pan on, or the pan off. Jeez. Some of them have drain plugs, some of them do not. Hopefully you're lucky enough to get one with the drain plug so you can drain it without having to pull the pan to get all the fluid out of it. Awesome. Now, the pan should just come right off. These pans have a reusable gasket. I'll probably get a new one in my kit, but I'll hang on to this anyway. As you can see, there's not a lot in here. It's a normal fur. This does have 200,000 miles on it, and they say it's never been touched, so we'll see what we can find. Well, that could be a problem. If you notice, the truck is a 4-wheel drive, and they put a 2-wheel drive filter on it. This filter should have a snout about that tall on it. So that could be a problem right there. That's probably why it was chattering at first. Probably because it was sucking just a little bit of air. Probably went to one of them fast service places and they put the wrong filter in because they didn't know what they were doing. So hopefully they'll watch it better. There is 5 10mm nuts, because these have studs on them. Most of the other bolts are 8mm. There's 3 valve bodies, and the solenoid block. The solenoid block uses the 30 Torx. And there's 2 on the plate, on the back. Now while I've got my 8mm on, right down here is the little spring for the rooster comb. And I like to get that out now. I'll get these bolts out of here. Really shouldn't say three valve bodies. There's 2 valve bodies. This is the accumulator valve body. Most people just think is this another valve body, but this is the accumulators for the transmission. We'll show you where all the check balls and stuff go when we get it back together. But we just want to inspect this right now so I can get my parts ordered. All right, 30 torques. Now, with those out of the way, a lot of people make the mistake of grabbing your screwdriver and prying this up, and all you're going to do is pull the connector out and damage it. Well, I mean, we're going to put a new one in anyway, but you don't want to. You really don't need to break anything. What I do is I take a mallet, I take a dead blow, and I lightly tap up and slowly pull up. There we go. It didn't want to come up. Now under your plate, you need to watch there. Here, there's a spring, and there'll be a steel check ball. If I can get it out. Still check ball on a spring for a little relief there. Get that out. Now there's a whole bunch of check balls in here. I'm not going to worry about them right now because I'm going to put new ones. You get new ones in your kit. Right here there's the servo for the band. Always make sure this is nice and soft, and it is. If it's hard, it needs to be replaced. Get some oil out of this. Now, there's 3 bolts here, and they go into the center support of this. You need to get these out. Now, these are special bolts. They have holes through them so it feeds fluid through into the center support. You get new ones in the kits, so you can get rid of these and throw these away. Now we're going to take a 21mm wrench, and we're going to just lightly tap and get this nut off of there. Get this out of the way. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of show you how to get this out. With this style, there's no way to get the seal out of here to replace the seal, so you've got to take these out. And I'll show you kind of a little trick to get them out. Hopefully it works. What I do is take 2 flat blade screwdrivers, little small ones, you put it on each side of this, and you just slowly, hopefully, just kind of work it back and forth. And it will slowly come up. Sometimes it can be a real bear. Let's see if that's tall enough to get it out. All right. Awesome. Pin's out. Now with the pin out, you slide this out. Take out your parking rod. And then right on the side, you take the seal out. Doesn't work. This thing's just falling apart. Wow. As you can see, that's just cracking and falling apart. So if you didn't replace this, you'd probably get a leak. Now that I've got my tranny turned around, we'll take the pump out. The input shaft, just hold it in out. We're going to leave it in for right now. We get our 10mm bolt headed bolts out. I had to wait for the air compressor to stop, but we continue. Get your bolts out. On each bolt, there's a washer. On the washer, you just want to take a pair of dikes, pull it off to the side, and then snip it and pull your washer off. You don't know how many times I've seen people leave the washers on and just stick another washer on there. I've taken pumps apart that had 3 washers on them. It's been built 3 times and nobody changed the washers out, so that's kind of ridiculous. Cut all your washers off your bolts. All your washers cut off. If you look in here, in this hole and this hole, the pump's threaded. So what you want to do is take your slide hammer, screw right into the threads, tap a little bit on this one, and then go to the other side till you pump out. There are people who do other things that aren't very good to pull pumps out. This is the only way you should ever pull these pumps out of here. Not that hard. This out of the way, we'll do the pump. Okay. Take the 10mm bolts out. Awesome. Put our gears out. And just like I was saying, my other ones, you need to check your pump gears. Make sure there's no damage. This looks really, really good. If there's any wear marks here, you need to check your pump. Make sure it's nice and smooth, and this one's in really good shape. Now the easiest way to get your seal out is I put it on top of the wing gear. You can get right in behind the seal here. And carefully tap it down. Came right out. Problem is, a lot of people will take it and try to cut it out here, and what you'll do is you'll put a big chunk, or you'll take a big chunk of aluminum out, and that takes the integrity away for holding the seal in, and the seal will come out prematurely if you take a big notch out of this. Okay, I'm gonna cut the bushings out later, so I'm just gonna put this to the side. Bring up the stator side. Oh, look at this. They didn't even take the other ring out for the filter. They just jammed it in there. Somebody wasn't paying attention. They got 2 seals in there, so that's great. Take your snap ring pliers and move the pressure regulator valve assembly out. Now, these will always wear out. I always put new ones in it. I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of hard to tell. But you can see how it's all shiny right here and it's dull over here. So this is all worn out and we have to put a new one in it. I always put new ones in them. This tranny, we're going to put a tugger kit in it, which I would suggest on all diesels. But we'll get a new one in the kit, so I'm going to throw this one away. Take out the springs. And carefully remove the valve. Now, this pressure valve, you need to really check. See, make sure there's no marks. This one looks really good. It's almost new. I built a tranny once that they had into 3 different shops in a year and a half, and it had been rebuilt 7 times, I believe they said. And I kept the valve. Let me show you that. Nobody caught this. You can see it looks good on this side, but if you turned it around, look at the wear. That's what they missed. That's why it was built 7 times, because the people weren't taking the valves out of the pump. You've always got to take the valves out of your pump. You know, 7 times in less than 2 years, and nobody caught this. I can't believe that. It's just unreal. All right, both these valves here are for the torque converter clutch. Get that the spring out. I'll show these a little bit closer when I go to put them back in, so you can see what they look like. Now this valve, this gets worn out too. These don't get worn out as bad, but you need to check to make sure this housing's not worn out, and this one looks really, really good. So I'm not worried about this. If it has any kind of wear on the inside, you need to replace this. And we'll get the valves out. Sometimes this will just fall out. Sometimes, oh, look at that. I've got 2 seals in the back, and as I said before, we'll get the bushings out later. Washer. This is your coast clutch. You got a sprag on here, or a roller clutch. Take that off. Sometimes they lock on here, and you got to push them to one side to get them to come up. Step ring. And the clutches. These are the coast clutches. I've got my coast clutch drum inside my press. Put my little tube on there and press it down. Put it in place, and we'll get this snap ring off. I always say this in my videos. If you're ever going to buy any kind of a tool, the arbor press here is the best bang for your buck, because it does so much. So invest in a good tool, get you a good arbor press, 3 ton at least. That's off. Alright, snap ring, spring, and then it's got a bonded piston on the inside of it. If you've ever seen some of my videos, you know what I'm going to say. Always replace your bonded pistons, never reuse these, ever. It's just like putting your old seals back in the tranny, and it just doesn't work. Now we'll remove this snap ring. These are your overdrive clutches, these big ones. Big snap ring. And these are the overdrives. You can start to see a little bit of burn right there. You can see a lot of black right there. Check your clutches or your stills, make sure they're not damaged. Get rid of those. Now under that, this is the top of the center support. There's a snap ring. You can get out. Now we'll take our planets out. We can take them out first before the snap ring. It really doesn't matter. Thrust washer. This is the race that runs on the coast clutch sprag or coast clutch roller, one-way roller clutch. Just like anything, you need to inspect it, make sure it's not damaged. Looking good there. Now this is your input planet. You need to check these, make sure they don't wobble, make sure they're nice and tight. E4ODs. We'll have an aluminum one. This is steel. If you're making a really heavy duty one, I would suggest putting steel ones in it. You can put the steel ones in the aluminum where the aluminum are. Check your splines here. Sometimes these splines will strip out, truck won't move. Get that out of the way, see if we can get our center support out now. Center support. Now in this snap ring for the overdrive, it's just a standard snap ring. Anytime you do this, they have a new one that's updated. There's a lot of problems with having these pop out, and this will pop out and run around here and cause quite a bit of damage. Don't remember the symptoms it gives you, but there is a spiral snap ring that I'm going to install. I'll show that to you. So I don't need this snap ring. I'm going to throw this one away. And again, a bonded piston, got to get rid of it and get a new one. And check your springs, make sure they're not broken. Sometimes they'll get cracks and break. This is good shape. On the other side, there is nothing holding this piston in. This is your intermediate, this is for second. It's just like, you wouldn't put these in, right? You wouldn't leave these in or reuse these. Why would you reuse these? I know a lot of people out there that do that. It's because the owners of the company don't understand and don't know anything about transmissions. It's just like, why do you want a company? Same thing with this spring here for the intermediates. Check it. Really good. Make sure it's not broken or cracked. Now your center, another part of the center support is down here. All right, that comes out. There are 3 8mm bolts. We want to get those off. All right, now on this, my thrust washer. I have my dead wall. I'm going to lightly tap the dead right here so you can get this off. Okay. I want to inspect this for any damage. Now this hub, this is where forward rides. Sometimes it gets grooved out, has big grooves in it. You need to check for that. This is the direct here. This is what feeds the direct, which is third gear. You need to check, make sure there's no grooves. And this is the bushing, or where a bushing ride, you need to make sure this is all nice and smooth it is. Now on the inside, there's a bearing. And this bearing runs right on this shaft, okay? That's where that runs. Earlier E4ODs don't have this bearing, and this shaft will have a nipple that goes into the output shaft. If it has that, they have a kit to update it to this, and I would strongly recommend updating them every time you do it if it has the old style without the bearing in it. We're going to get our little seals off of here, our metal ones. They just lock together.
Now,
this is our direct drum. This is third and reverse. These are our intermediates. This is second. And, well, we're looking good now. You want to check your sprag. Again, check your inside race. Check your sprag assembly. Well, you want to make sure there's no big flat marks on your sprag. They're looking good. There's a thrust washer. Just like the end, this is where the rings ride. You want to make sure these aren't grooved out, and you want to check to make sure this is not grooved out for your sprag.
snapping out.
Well, you can see it's starting to burn. No damage to the seals though. Good, yeah, you can see that it's starting to turn black. And we'll get the drum apart. Got our drum and arbor press. We'll put our little tool back on there. Push it down. And remove the retaining snap ring. Like that. Got that out. Go back to the bench. Okay, you got that. Spring, want to make sure these aren't damaged. They don't usually get very damaged. You've got your piston. Usually just pull them right out. Now if you notice on this one, there is no seals on the inside or outside. Okay, they're inside the drum. So you take your pick. Okay, get both these seals out. And get all the bushings out later. This is your band. This is for intermediate. The only time this band ever applies is in manual second. Other than that, this band is never used. The only time it applies is manual second. And then 99% of the time, they look new like this. So we don't need to replace that. Forward drum. We got a little thrust washer here, or bearing. Here's those rings I was telling you about to watch on the hub. You got to watch. Sometimes they dig out in here. If it's dug out in here, these rings get grooved and they get too small and you can't put new ones in it, so you got to replace your drum. The forwards have that problem, and then sometimes there's threads in here or splines in here. Sometimes these splines strip out. You'll take a tranny apart and there'll be nothing wrong with it. These splines are missing, and that's why the vehicle won't move. Thrust washer. We'll get this one apart. forward. This is forward gear, so this is first gear. First gear looks really good. Barely any kind of marks on it. Now this one has got a bevel plate at the bottom. And there's a snap right now. Fords. On the 4R100s, Fords, let's see, oil out of here, like to use different thicknesses of snap rings to do their end play for their clutch clearance. So if you're not familiar with these and know which ones go where, you can put them right back into the drum, because Fords have different thicknesses for each snap ring here, so you need to watch that. Bevel plate, sometimes these break, you need to check that. This is a little ring so it doesn't wear into the piston. And then this one has a seal on the inside on the drum. It's a little O-ring and a lip seal on the outside of the piston. Ring gear, forward piston or forward planets. Again, with any kind of planet, you want to check where your ring gear ride. You want to check your planets, make sure there's no nicks on any of the teeth. You want to make sure all the gears are nice and solid. They don't wobble back and forth or up and down too much. You can get a feeler gauge between each one of these if you need to, if you think there's something wrong. There you go. Sun shell. This is a newer style. It's hardened. Sometimes the direct drum will beat into here too much, and you'll need to replace your shell. Now on the very bottom, you can see your planet, and you got a hub here that's got a sprag in it. You want to let it go one way, and get that snap ring out. Right there. Take a 90-degree pick, pull your planet out. Again, you got to check your planet to make sure it's good. Do that a little bit more, a little bit. Thrust washer. Now if you look, there's a snap ring. This is your low and reverse clutches. Just like that. Now, on the inside of the shaft, or on the shaft, there is a snap ring that holds the shaft in. Get your snap ring pliers and take it out. Sometimes they can be a real bear. Luckily, this one came right out. There's our output shaft on this. This one has a bearing. There is the thrust washer style and the bearing style. All 4R100s have a bearing style. All 4R100s, this is locked on E4OD. This gear will actually slide off. So you gotta inspect everything here and make sure it's all good. The rear ring gear. Grab this and it should pull most of the clutches out with it. Alright. Hold roll in reverse. And here you have another roller. Sometimes these get hot and melt. You need to check this. You need to make sure you can wiggle it and not feel the rollers move back and forth. Inspect this, and then we'll inspect the inside erase once we get it out. And it looks like our lower reverse is in good shape. E4ODs, some of them will not have this wavy plate at the bottom. The piston in the bottom is different. Okay, I'll get my case turned around. With my case turned around, I'll put 11 millimeter socket on here. There's 5 bolts right here that hold that rear piston in and spring for the and they bolt into that rear race. There's the race. Just like all the other ones, you need to look at it, make sure there's no damage. Looking good. Spring. And the piston, the easiest way to get the piston out is we'll put this up on its nose. Oh, and it fell right out. How about that? The piston's there's 2 lip seals here. If it is an E4OD and does not have the wavy, these will not be lip seals, they'll be lathe cut seals. That's the difference. The lathe cut seals, the piston's actually taller. So, alright, I'll get some of this cleaned up and we'll cut bushings out and get everything in the wash. I've got most of my stuff cleaned up. We're going to go do the bushings now. Anytime you cut bushings out or knock bushings out, you got to be very careful not to damage anything that you're taking the bushing out of. If it's at all possible, always use a driver and knock them out so you don't have to cut them out. I'm going to show you some different ways of doing it. Take your driver for the rear bushings in this. Now there's 2 bushings in the back of here. We're going to update it to a 1-piece bushing, and I'll show you that when we install it. But there's 2 bushings in here. We're going to knock them both through. It's a lot easier to knock them out than it is to chisel them out. It's a lot better for you too. But some things you do have to chisel out. Now, as you can see, there's a bushing here in this sun gear. On an E4OD, this sun gear will actually lift out, so it's easier to do. This one is molded into the drum, but we can take this and knock this bushing through. Take that bushing. Now if you turn it over, there's another bushing on the other side, and we can't really push this one out, so you have to cut this one. Now if you look really close, you can usually see where the bushings, if you look at the bushing, you can see where they're pressed together. You can see that it's actually pushed together. There's one, it was flat and they rolled it around and locked it together. Sometimes you can actually see where it was put together. If I'm lucky enough. If you're lucky enough, you can kind of see where it goes together. And boy, this one's tough. Some of you can't see. It might be right there. You take your chisel and you carefully chisel it away. It's not right there. Oh, right here. Yep. If you chisel it out, it usually breaks the seal fairly easy, and then your bushing comes right out. Kind of the same way. We can knock one of the bushings all the way through. And then the rear one we have to cut out. And let's see if we can see where this one goes together. Might be that right there. Maybe. Oh, it's right there. See how easy that came out? Okay. Didn't do any damage to anything. Shell. I believe we can push these through. There's two, one at the top, one at the bottom. Pump's a little harder because the 4R100, what they do is they have a lip. So when you get the new bushing, you push it all the way down to this lip. So this one's a little bit tougher. You got a little bit of a corner right here where you can take a pretty good sized screwdriver. Bend it out just a little bit, and you can take it straight down. You don't want to gouge anything on the inside here. You don't want to cause any marks. Not least, got the stator. This one's pretty deep inside the hole. Sometimes you can get the edge and cut it out. Sometimes it's a real pain in the butt. It's still pretty tight in there. Got it loose. Got it cut in half. But it's still pretty tight. There you go. Wow. Does not come out. I'm going to turn it over. And there's one down the back side of it here. And just carefully try to cut this down the seam. Alright, bushings are all cut out. get everything in the wash, start doing the valve body. All right, as you can see, there's my kit with new pistons. Remember, always put the new pistons in it. Filter, bushings, you should always put new bushings in it. I have a Sonex valve here that I'm going to explain when I put it in. This one goes in the pump. New solenoid block, and in this one we're putting a tugger kit. I'm probably not going to go over how to install that. Just if you do one, follow the instructions completely. If it says to do something, do it anyway. You know, just do what they say. They put a lot of R&D in there. So when I'm doing the valve body, you're going to see different springs after I get done cleaning everything, because I'm putting the tugger kit in. But that'll do that. We'll start on the valve body next and get that going.